What's cracking, yo? Welcome back to Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. What's cracking? Breaking down some more videos from Thinking Basketball. This one is episode 13 of Greatest Peaks. Detailed analysis of LeBron James at his best. Excited to get into this one. LeBron James is still playing as we speak. Just wrapped up his 20th year. Still one of the best players in the league, in my opinion. Still a top 10 player in this league, in my opinion. Though his athleticism has waned a bit. His defense is more or less gone for the most part. And in spurts, he can gather it up to play a good defensive possession or two here and there. Legs aren't always with him, especially towards the back end of the season, even with gaps of rest. He is still one of the best players in the league, and I've never seen a player this good this far into their career. And he's had a relatively long prime, all things considered. Let's get into this video. It's just short of 30 minutes long, so enjoy it. Let's get it popping. LeBron is fourth all-time for me. Number 4 all-time on my list.
The hardest thing to figure out about LeBron James at his peak might just be when exactly he peaked. LeBron hit another gear in the 2009 season, winning his first MVP and authoring one of the most incredible statistical profiles in NBA history. At 24, he had the perfect blend of youthful speed and explosive power. And in his second tour of Northeast Ohio, LeBron's offensive mastery produced incredible playoff moments. And those seasons are great choices, but during those championship seasons in South Beach, his ability to do almost everything might have taken him to heights that no one has ever reached.
You are watching what greatness is all about.
Where's Larry Bird in all this?
Has it blocked by Elijah Wan? Michael Jordan saves the day.
This series tackles one question: who was the best at his best? We start at the ABA merger and go through the best multi-year stretches, examining the legends who provided the most on-court impact. These are the greatest peaks.
2012 to 2013 LeBron James.
Compared to Michael, Magic, Kobe, all the ones that's making so success in the league. It's great, and I'm going to just keep working hard, and someday it could be another one that could be compared to me.
From a distance, LeBron just looked bigger and stronger than other players, but zoom in and there's way more going on. During those Miami years, his game was built around getting to the rim, and he approached the basket in just about every way imaginable. He drops his shoulder, goes off his left foot, and finishes southpaw here. But on this one, he dips the shoulder and jumps off 2 feet to float one in from short range. Here's another variant. He has a runway but springs into a jump stop, and fluid, adaptable athleticism was key to LeBron's finishing prowess. Of course, his size was a huge factor too, crossing back to the left, and notice how quickly the ball gets to about 10 feet so he can release it away from those long Tim Duncan arms. LeBron's mass was arguably more important than his length, able to plow through contact from defenders. Jimmy Butler gives LeBron a pretty healthy push here, and unlike lankier penetrators, it barely derailed the L train, and he still has the balance to explode for the stuff.
Listen, LeBron James going to the rim, especially in his prime, his athletic prime, there's nothing you could do, man. There's nothing you could do. Nothing. The only player I've seen, and though we have a small sample size of it, that really does it as good or better. I mean, don't get me wrong. You got players in the past. You got Kemp could do it. Dominique Wilkins was a monster. But Zion Williamson, he literally takes damn near no jump shot. So everything he does is driving to the basket in the paint. A higher percentage than even LeBron James used to do. But unfortunately with Zion, he's always injured, so the sample size is smaller. So it's hard to say, compare it given LeBron James' track record. But just taking it for what it is, Zion literally lives in the paint.
LeBron was probably the best ever at absorbing blows in midair while still powering up a good shot, which requires incredible body awareness and reactivity. These reactions are automatic, subconscious movements. This contact blunts his vertical leap, so he adjusts by pulling the ball back and arching it over the defender. This is unprecedented neurological wiring in such a giant explosive body. Here, he has the instinct to dip his shoulder in front of the defender, who bounces off LeBron as he organically twists into a layup. Some of this is just physics. A 275-pound body moving at high speeds packs quite a punch. Paul George goes flying here, and again LeBron adjusts off his right leg and finishes with the left hand. And yes, it was reported that James weighed in at 270-something pounds during these seasons, slightly heavier than the 250 to 260 he supposedly played at in Cleveland a few years prior, and that zapped some of his acceleration. In 2009, his first step was quicker, and his combination of speed and power were at video game levels. If we're submitting entries into the all-time highlight competition, this first MVP year is the version to nominate. But that additional explosiveness was offset by a weaker outside shot, a game that wasn't quite as refined, and somewhat paradoxically, he wasn't a definitively better finisher on his drives back then. This is because he developed so many ways to finish at the cup, from contorting reverses to little spin moves that finished with a soft push shot. LeBron was a master of tempo, of controlling speeds. Take this drive into Duncan, where slowing down is the key to creating space for a gentle finish. Despite weighing more than Karl Malone, his agility and explosiveness were still guard-like, and with a screen he was surgical, attacking the position of the second defender. He leans the wrong way here, so LeBron rejects the screen and explodes in a straight line. Yet on this one, he feels the defender too far left, so he builds momentum going around the pick, and then he's an unstoppable freight train, and that is just bionic strength and dexterity that would make Isaac Asimov proud. Oh yeah. There were more subtle tricks too. He knows Duncan waits to commit to a shot, so he upfakes on an explosive jump stop before stepping through for the layup. All of this made LeBron one of the best finishers ever. Among qualifying players, he has the highest field goal percentage season at the rim this century, and since he maintained comparable efficiencies in the playoffs, there's a great argument these are the best finishing seasons ever. These superpowers were only amplified in transition, where he could build ahead of steam and attack into open space. He just shed smaller players like they were mosquitoes. This is the android upgrade of what we saw in episode 5 from Magic Johnson, out sprinting everyone and changing directions at high speeds while completely under control. Size and speed are one thing, but LeBron's ability to decelerate, remain controlled, and flow into a move supercharged his fast break scoring. He could use those same half-court tools, change of tempo, varied jumping angles, and so on, only with a head of steam against backpedaling defenses. Even with big men in the paint, LeBron could shift on the fly. He's angling toward the middle here, but then slides left for two. And there is a cerebral component to many of these. He throws a head fake to freeze a defender, and he's unstoppable with all that space to attack. Bron did this stuff to great defenders too. Andre Iguodala's hips are facing left here, so LeBron goes right. Then Andre recovers, so he gives him an inside out for the full spin cycle. In real time, the whole thing is a blur, and it's free throws. It was basically impossible to slow down James in transition, running alongside him or recovering to the paint because of his width and change of direction. Here, the defender is basically even with him, but since he's so much smaller, he's essentially poster decoration. In short, LeBron was the most devastating transition scorer the league had ever seen, and 2012-13 is the best two-year stretch in Synergy's database, averaging an insane 1.4 points per possession in transition on over 4 opportunities a game, numbers he nearly replicated to a T in the postseason. The totality of all this made LeBron one of the best scorers ever, with his playoff runs in Miami stacking up incredibly well against just about anybody in league history when adjusting for opponent quality. Another key to LeBron's scoring during these years was the development of his post game. These plays weren't nearly as deadly as his transition game or...
So I'll pause there. Up until LeBron James started actually working on his post game in Miami and implementing it, that was something I would scream to the mountains. Prior to that, LeBron, I don't understand why he don't get his big ass in the post. He would dominate if he knew it was good for him. Get in the post, LeBron. Get in the post, get in the post, get in the... You are 6'8", you are a monster, you are athletic, you are strong, you are big. Get in the post. Get in the post. And he finally did it. And we saw one of the most efficient seasons. Well, I don't know if it ended up being his most efficient season, but I know his field goal percentage anyway was off the charts when he started going to the post that season in Miami.
Or half-court drives, but adding some back-to-the-basket skills kept defenses honest and gave him another arrow in his quiver. He often caught it in the mid-post and went to work, backing down smaller wings.
He often do that little hook there.
With his size advantage and great balance, he could wheel in 2 shots down low or bust out that spin move that he loved. There's a Tim Duncan-esque use of the offhand to protect the ball against Kawhi Leonard. We often think of great scorers as having pretty fadeaways or nasty go-to moves, but LeBron's physical dominance and fantastic feel carved out hyper-efficient shots, and he balanced those shots with a respectable outside game. This was a shift from his younger years, where he was near the bottom of the league in outside shooting percentages, but in Miami he jumped above league average on his long-range shots. Behind a slightly smoother shooting motion, LeBron was more patient getting into his jumper.
I was literally about this. I was about to pause and say that. I was going to say, if you go look at his early years as a Cavalier, look at his jump shot, look at the form. He changed it drastically. Much more fluid shooting motion. So kudos to him, because that jumper was broken ugly when he was younger.
And as a result, he made about 42% of his long twos in Miami, a step up from the 39% he made in his final 2 years in Cleveland. He also improved by more than 3 percentage points from downtown after making only 34% of his threes between 2009 and 2011. So, during these seasons, LeBron's outside shot rounded out his incredible scoring game, but that was only half of his offensive equation because his playmaking talents helped take him to another level.
Training in the pool.
Baby, we can go anytime. You just let me know what's good for you.
You can't get through Detroit training in no pool. You think Michael trained in the pool? No, I don't think so.
Stop looking at my lemonade.
Here I come, cannonball.
Because LeBron was so effective driving to the hoop, defenses would counter by packing the paint, forcing him to beat them with his jumper. Dallas did this to some degree in the 2011 finals, not overreacting to him as a shooter, and then loading up on his drives. Tyson Chandler spies James instead of worrying about the weak side, and so 2 big men are waiting for him in the paint. When the Mavericks clogged these driving lanes like this, they were content with Mario Chalmers or Dwayne Wade beating them with outside shots. There was more to LeBron's huge scoring drop-off in that series than just Dallas's defense, but 2 years later, a fantastic Spurs team packed the paint again and made LeBron's driving gaps as narrow as possible. It was common for multiple Spurs players to converge on him in the lane, and this strategy limited LeBron's effectiveness more than any other series between 2012 and 14, although that improved jumper still made it a solid scoring series for James. And this is where a more diverse scoring arsenal made him so difficult to slow down, not only with outside shots, but by playing out of the post. Post play provided a different angle to attack from. Defenses couldn't really load up on any driving lanes in these spots, and because LeBron was such a gifted passer, it made doubling him down there a bit tricky. If teams weren't careful, a double team could create short, easy kickouts to three-point shooters, and a huge part of LeBron's offensive value was unlocking long-range marksmen out on the perimeter. With the Spurs clogging the lane, LeBron sets up a rim finish, but it's really a pass. And crafty deliveries like this gave shooters optimal breathing room. If he didn't throw it early, he had the strength to skip it across the court, where it was a longer recovery for the defense. That's just incredible speed from that position to beat the closeout. James might have been the best skip passer the league had ever seen, swinging it cross-court to his bandmates, and when teams tried to sit in his driving gaps, changing sides like this is a natural counter. Of course, LeBron also manipulated defenders. There's no indication he's passing as he turns the corner here, and the look away prevents this defender from playing the passing lane, and it's a clean shot. He could hit these same passes in transition against a wall of defenders. The velocity.
There were a handful of passes that LeBron made. I remember watching him play, and he would legitimately fool me at times. Something that not many players could ever. Magic would do it, Jason Kidd, Nash, not so much for me. The Kidd was a better passer than Nash for me. But there were times, there was even one time LeBron James fooled the camera on the TV during the broadcast. They thought the ball was going somewhere else. Nope.
Velocity on that one buys the shooter more time. And again, he uses his drive to disguise a delivery. That move sent Kevin Garnett in the wrong direction, giving Mario Chalmers all day to shoot. That driving pressure and a powerful dribble took him right into the teeth of the defense, where he could spray it around to wide-open shooters.
All career long.
Miami shot 38% from downtown, with LeBron on the court in his final 3 seasons there, surrounding him with better three-point weapons and going to smaller, stretchier lineups. Unfortunately, their second best player, Dwayne Wade, was a poor three-point shooter, which wasn't an ideal fit next to James. Wade was coming off one of the great peaks in league history himself, and in many ways was functionally similar to LeBron. He was a dangerous finisher and difficult to keep out of the lane, and he could spearhead an entire offense with a pick-and-roll game as well. In effect, this made him LeBron's backup because the Heat could flank James or Wade with identical lineups. But since neither of them were really good spot-up shooters, on possessions initiated by Wade, LeBron was less valuable standing in the corner.
Yes.
A good shooter just ends up with a high percentage 3 there instead. Even though Wade-centric possessions were perfectly effective, Miami's best offense was LeBron ball, giving him the keys and letting him make the primary decisions. Miami actually excelled when James played without his sidekick, logging over 40 games without Wade during these seasons at a 57-win pace. With Wade, they were only a touch better, reaching a 59-win pace, and most notably, the Heat's offensive efficiency was slightly better without Dwayne. That Heat offense was good in the regular season and fantastic in the playoffs, a pattern that is held for LeBron's entire prime, which is a testament to his scoring and playmaking ability. Making him the centerpiece of a heliocentric system with the right finishers orbiting around him produced historically good offense because of his decision-making. For instance, take this pop quiz. Where's the optimal pass? Congratulations if you found it, because the Thunder were blindsided by that pass, and for good reason. We've seen him snap it to this corner if the strong side defender slides over, and if he feels the weak side defender leaning toward the roll man, he could fire it to the other wing for more target practice. Some of these require elite reflexes, snapping off passes when an opening emerges, and here the roll man pops away from the hoop, and as LeBron looks for him, it takes a millisecond before he processes the cut to the basket and delivers a laser. Great passers not only deliver balls quickly, but they camouflage releases from a variety of angles, so when LeBron touched the paint, defenses had little indication of what was coming. A kick out to a shooter, a drop off to a big man, or a score. They basically all look the same until the moment the ball leaves his hands, and he usually chose the best option. All of this takes great spatial awareness, tracking multiple defenders, so when one moves, he knows exactly where to attack.
Great googly moogly.
This one takes some grandmaster recognition, eyeing an angle with Tim Duncan's hands down and throwing a rope the second his receiver gets inside position. Like all high-end passers, LeBron would try some into tight coverage that didn't pan out, and I think his vision and reads improved in later seasons. He almost never missed straightforward layups like this one, but he could overlook some slightly trickier hookups. That's there for the taking, and we've seen post players hit this cutter a number of times during this series. He also wasn't regularly tossing this lob pass to the roll man back then like he would in subsequent years, and sometimes his bounce passes could be a bit tough to handle for his big men. Still, that vision and quick processing led to some spectacular passes in dynamic situations, chugging down the court here for a lob, and then yes, that is exactly what you think.
Beautiful.
A touch pass where he leaves the ball hanging right in front of the rim. Between his visual processing and that fluid athleticism, there were moments where he was almost bird-like with some passes, able to anticipate openings and then snap off high-value dimes. In transition, he was a little Magic-like, pushing the pace with speed and forcing defenses to commit so he could drop it off.
Very little
This is a three-man wall in the lane to barricade his penetration.
Listen, Magic's fast breaks were otherworldly. They were God tier, okay? Very little Magic. Like, Magic's fast breaks were, oh my gosh.
And that leads to wide open threes. And here OKC forms a wall at an angle, which creates an alley that LeBron quickly spots for free throws. You might have noticed how many of these assists were to Wade. He and LeBron had really nice chemistry on cuts to the basket, and while Flash was still a great offensive player in those seasons, the more he receded into a secondary role, the better LeBron's numbers became. His shot creation estimates with Wade in the game were in the 93rd percentile historically in the playoffs, but with Wade on the bench, they would have ranked 8th all-time, almost perfectly matching his earlier numbers in Cleveland. His free throw rates with Wade dipped to the 93rd percentile, but without him they would have ranked 7th all-time, again fairly close to his numbers as a Cav. So, as a result, LeBron's scoring went to another stratosphere in those playoffs with his Slash brother on the bench, surpassing even Michael Jordan with what would be the best adjusted numbers in playoff history. That's not an entirely apples-to-apples comparison, but it's part of why the Heat offense was more efficient, playing a
That's definitely not apples to apples. You got to adjust to other people too.
Larger brand of LeBron ball. So while LeBron was the centerpiece of an incredibly effective attack, all of his athleticism and computational power helped on the other end of the court, where he was a key component in Miami's defense. During their 4-year run, the Heatles frequently attacked ball screens with a second defender, which meant other defenders had to scramble behind the play as everyone recovered. And this blitzing of the pick and roll created a kind of frenetic approach on defense that required a ton of coordinated rotations and also forced a lot of turnovers. Sometimes this scheme asked James to sprint across the court to a popping big man. This would be an impossible rotation if the screener flared to the three-point line, but LeBron was so fast in a straight line that he could arrive when these passes did. He had great awareness of on-ball threats, sliding over to help early here and choking off this pass, which leads to another turnover. In Cleveland, James's defensive success was more about brute force athleticism, but in Miami he played a more cerebral game. He isn't preoccupied with this cut because he knows a middle pick and roll is coming, and then he's big enough to battle with Duncan for the rebound. Here he needs to help on the roll man, but realizes he's in a pickle, leaving a wide open three or maybe a dunk, so he covers the pass while contesting the mid-range shot. He was an active communicator, calling out for a switch so his point guard could find a more natural matchup, then instantly pouncing on a breakdown to help influence a block from Shane Battier. LeBron's on a sharpshooter here, and he chases him off two screens for a decent look and all that action pulled rebounders out of the paint, and it's a foul. So the next time down, LeBron tells Battier to take his man coming off the screen, switches to the big, and just blows the whole thing up. Because of his size, he could comfortably switch onto bigger players like this and guard them in isolation, and he could protect the rim like he was a big man as well. This wasn't the incredible paint protection we've seen from the great bigs in this series, but LeBron added a ton of value lurking in the lane, and since the Heat would often play small ball, he was the primary vertical presence in many of these situations. He was potent enough as a shot blocker to deter shots. Duncan freezes when he sees him here and then is totally stuck, and some of these were elite rejections that you would see from high-end defensive big men. He slides over here in case there's a laydown pass and covers so much ground that he spikes it, and this play is spectacular, coming from the corner after Wade whiffs on a gamble to kill a dunk. Now, he didn't have the same numbers as a shot-blocking big, so these plays weren't always the norm. Sometimes they could be fouls, and other times he wasn't quite as loaded up and vertical on some of these contests at the rim. But his timely rotations in the paint and this big man-like skill were a major asset for the Heat. There was a horizontal component to these rotations too. He has to cover about 16 feet in the second that this pass is airborne, and that prevents Steph Curry from firing and leads to a bad pass and a steal. He could play a cross-court pass like this or explode to intercept the roll pass, and that closing speed allowed him to be in two places at once. These short little bursts of speed allowed him to cover tons of court like a rangy center fielder in baseball. And his hands were pretty good too, racking up enough steals to land in the 88th percentile historically. Some of these plays on the ball were certainly a bit risky, and so there were some occasional misses in there. On this one, he's in time on the rotation but lunges for more and comes up empty, and sometimes he'd sell out for a pick six, and when those plays failed, they often exposed the defense and led to a high-value shot. But he rarely lost track of the action off ball. Here's a lapse on some screening set, although he was usually pretty aware of his own man and the basketball from the other side of the court. So, despite a few hiccups, he was a fairly low-error player away from the ball. He was highly knowledgeable of opponents' playbooks during these seasons, helping early and rotating on point in Miami's scrambling scheme. And he was even known to call out opposing sets. He switches this to blow up Indiana's screening action, and his pattern recognition skills were also a key to his defensive value. That value helped the Heat produce quality defensive ratings in the regular season and solid ones in the postseason. Among regular playoff teams, they were about middle of the pack in defensive performance during these years, despite playing smaller lineups than most teams at the time. LeBron also loved rear-view blocks, recovering to catch players from behind. And this was part of his chase-down arsenal in transition, where he just size up smaller players like an adult playing with young children. He tried a similar approach in the half court, although it was far less effective on drives like this when James lost a step to the dribbler. And containing ball handlers in space was probably his biggest defensive weakness.
Yeah.
It wasn't that LeBron couldn't keep quicker or smaller players in front of him. He used his length and size to cut off angles well, but he also had to guess and react instantly to change directions on stops and starts. And he was vulnerable to these because at 270 pounds, it took a lot to break and re-accelerate in short spaces. His technique worked really well whenever those little hops and reactions were on time and in the right direction. But if his feet were off the ground when his man started to go, he couldn't laterally recover at his size. This made LeBron an interesting on-ball defender because he regularly broke down to change of direction attacks, but when he sized it up well, he could keep really small guards in front of him. He was fairly successful, switched onto the shifty Tony Parker in the 2013 finals, and he was big enough to then switch onto Duncan and stonewall him in the post. Another downside to being so big was that navigating screens was a tricky endeavor. James didn't have that sharp cornering required to stick with some of these routes, and he couldn't really slide that much weight or rely.
I'm glad he brought the screening up, because I was going to say he's not the best in these screens and these pick situations. Sometimes I constantly see him get burnt, and then I just always have to add with the playing center. A lot of times, you hear people say, well, LeBron James guard centers, LeBron James guard centers. Well, pump the brakes. Has there been scenarios where he came off on a switch off, the center haven't yet got their position, he's able to swipe down on the ball, deflect a shot, make a hard contest? Sure. But by no means was this guy ever going down the court, matching up with his center, letting them get their position, and banging with him in the post consistently. That was not the case. He would get ate up by any true center. Normally, when LeBron James gets inserted at center, legitimately get inserted at the 5, it's when they bring out small ball lineups. And especially nowadays, most nights LeBron James is the biggest person on the court, given all the small ball being played. But he was definitely, a lot of his deflections and block shots coming in on centers were in help defense situations and flashing the paint and coming up from behind people. I've seen him get switched off on bigs early, like Joel Embiid. I'll never forget it. I started chuckling. I was like, I've been waiting for this moment. Watch what happens. Joel Embiid gets the ball, starts backing LeBron James, trying everything to keep Embiid out the paint. Embiid is just pushing him down. LeBron starts, help. Couldn't do it. A real big? Nah.
Rely on tap dancing feet to slip by some picks. You see him go wide here, so he can chase with more of a running motion versus sliding, and because he was so broad, he offered a large screening target, which made it challenging for him to stay with smaller players when they ran around like this. All the major one-number metrics view LeBron as a strong defender, and with his huge offensive value, his overall impact metrics are right at the top of the heap. Interestingly, these numbers were higher in his first 2 MVP seasons, when he was the lone star in Cleveland, surrounded by outside shooters who gave him space to attack the rim. In Miami, he didn't have the ball as much, and his off-ball impact paled in comparison to his on-ball game. He could hurt defenses with timely cuts, he had good instincts for when to backdoor a vulnerable defender, but his spot-up shooting was only mediocre, and more importantly, playing away from the ball took the decision-making out of his hands. We've discussed scoring resiliency, but LeBron Ball provided an overall resiliency that was difficult to scheme against because he could leverage his scoring and playmaking off of each other. He couldn't just plug into any offense and add the same value, but a well-constructed attack built around LeBron produced a championship-level offense.
Sure.
His high IQ, Swiss Army knife defense also made him one of the better perimeter defenders in league history, and that two-way impact probably made him the greatest floor raiser we've ever seen. So, given that he has a great argument as a top 10 scorer and top 10 playmaker ever, it's easy to see why so many people consider LeBron James the greatest player of all time.
Overall, I think that was pretty well done. And that's one thing I've also always said about LeBron is that he wasn't a great on-ball defender. Mike, Kobe, they were great on-ball defenders. Bron, not so much. But he was a physical specimen that we haven't quite seen before that definitely allowed him to do things defensively that not many other people can do. I just noticed he gave a slight to Kobe. I think like in this one, and even in the Jordan one, he was like, oh, this is why people, consider him as a legitimate candidate to be one of the greatest of all time. And I think with Kobe, he just said one of the greatest scorers of all time. I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure he didn't say player, but he said scorer. Anyway, No doubt, man. LeBron, like I said, I got him number 4. This is pretty well done. I think it did a pretty good job at covering his things that he was efficient at, and also LeBron James's deficiencies as well, to a degree. But yeah, LeBron James changed his jump shot a lot. Like I said, his early years in the Cavaliers, that jump shot looked ugly, but much more fluid now, much better form, much better gathering motion from the Miami years, and then on into the second stint with the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James' physical attributes allowed him to do a lot of things we've never seen before. He was unstoppable going to the paint. Unstoppable. Unless you had the perfectly schemed defense. And that allowed so many passing opportunities, especially out on the perimeter. I was going to say that, but he nailed it. And correct, LeBron James isn't the type of player that you can just plug and play, just drop on any team and he'll be effective and the team will be more effective. No. LeBron James requires a certain formula to build around him if you want to get the best out of LeBron James. All right. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about it. Take care. Be safe. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. We out, baby.